All right, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started here now that we've hit noon. Just as a reminder to everybody, go ahead and hit that raise hand button, and then I'll ask you to unmute, and then you can ask your question to Coach. And he said we can go ahead and get started with no opening statement. And so it looks like we've got the first one from Scott Wright with the Oklahoman. Go ahead, Scott.
Hey, Mike, just wanted to check and see what is the plan at quarterback this week?
Well, we're working all of our guys, getting them good quality work. And I told the coaches that we needed to make a decision by Thursday after practice.
And what is Zane's involvement at this time?
Well, did you say Zane?
Yes.
He's practicing. He's getting work like the other guys are.
Thank you.
Okay. Remember to click that raise hand button if you have a question. Okay, we've got one from Jenny Carlson. Jenny, go ahead.
Hey, Mike, with the off week, can you just give us a little insight into sort of what you hope to accomplish with the guys with that extra week and just sort of how you saw them react to having that extra time?
We did the thing that I mentioned that worked the fundamentals in all three phases. We had really good practices last week. And then we had a good workout last night, not really a practice, but we got them back together and had a workout last night. And we just stressed the things that we feel like that we need to get accomplished, need to be a better run fit defense, minimize a few of the big plays that we've gotten, and then continue to work offensively and rushing the football and being good at our basic play action passes, which we've worked on from day one. So there wasn't any big mystery or any big secret to what we tried to get accomplished, just good quality work.
You guys obviously had good results coming out of the first bye week last year. Did you try to replicate that or just in terms of plans and how you tried to approach things, or different year, different team? Did you do some things differently this time around?
Same thing, very similar to what we did last year. I mean, obviously it's, every year is different. We all know that. I think watching college football, I don't know how much carryover there is anymore from one year to the other, but the plan, to answer your question, was very similar to what it was a week ago. A year ago.
Also, I'm curious, obviously a year ago, you guys were trying to get some things figured out. Same thing this year, but with the 3 losses back to back to back, where's the sort of emotional center of your guys right now, the psychological center, if you will? What's your sense of just how they're processing what's happened thus far with this team?
As I mentioned last week, they've been really good. Obviously, they want to win and have success. But I watch their willingness to compete in practice, their attentiveness in meetings and practice. And it's been good. Like I said, they were really good last week. I think that the maturity does help us. I think they understand and they can see where we've been deficient in certain areas and ways to improve that to give us ourselves a chance to win a game.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Remember, click that react and then raise hand button if there's any questions. Okay, we'll go back to Scott. Scott, go ahead.
Mike, with the extra time like you've had off the open week, do you have the opportunity to maybe dig in more with analysts and guys that are kind of on the fringe to try to get better, deeper input from those guys as well?
Well, I work with those guys each week, and I don't really have an issue with what we're trying to get accomplished. I feel like it's the right things. Now, I've been very honest over the last month and a half. There's times that I didn't agree with game plans, and we've looked at that, made adjustments. There's times that we need to be in better position as players. So we tried to get all of that balled up in one and get as much as we could get accomplished last week. And then obviously we'll do it this week before we have to take off on Thursday.
Okay, next we'll go to Tyler from the Tulsa World. Go ahead, Tyler.
Hey, Mike, are there things that I guess what specifically are you able to do during the bye week that maybe you don't have as much time to do during a normal week, like you specifically?
We can get into a little more depth in watching practice and game planning that we have the extra time. Obviously, during a game week, we finish everything up on Sunday and Monday. Tuesday and Wednesday, we get as much game plan concepts as we can for that game. On an open week, we have a little more time to look at things in depth and try to figure out really what's best for the upcoming opponent versus being rushed into 2 days on a normal game week.
Okay, we'll go to Marcus Trevino from the Stillwater News Press. Go ahead, Marcus.
Hey, Mike, I was just wondering if you were able to watch the BYU game live and what you've made of how they've played this season.
You said if I was able to watch BYU, what?
Live since you had the time off.
No, I didn't go to Provo. Is that what you're asking me? If I
No, I
watched
meant
it?
like on television.
Oh yeah, I watched most of the game on television. Yes, and they're having a great year. Kalani's doing a great job. They're very mature. They're getting really good quarterback play, in my opinion. And they have good players. They've got, I think they've got probably 3 or 4 guys that are going to get drafted off the team from what I see just from the naked eye. And I don't follow up on any of that, but they've got a good team. They're mature. They're playing with confidence. Quarterback's playing really good at this time, and they're getting good pass rush. They get good pressure on the quarterback with 4-man rush.
Okay, we'll go back to Jenny. Go ahead, Jenny.
Hey, Mike, you mentioned a minute ago that you've been open and critical of some of the coaching throughout the year. You don't make a lot of coaching changes, or you haven't historically. I'm just kind of curious and I'm not saying, what might or might not happen this season, but just in general, what's sort of been your philosophy and evaluating coaches when you have made changes, why you've pulled the trigger at a certain time, just kind of your thought process as you've had that in the past.
Evaluating coaches during the season and at the end of the season, and then potentially making changes, over my 20 years has been something that's not been a big part of who I am. I believe that the coaches that I hire, that I'm responsible for them performing and putting us in a position to have success. And that's a 24/7 job for me. And then my responsibility is to see things that I feel like need adjusted or need fixed and have discussions with those coaches or that side of the ball, whatever particular side it may be. And then if I can see improvements being made in one specific area or on one side of the football, then I feel like that's us making progress and moving in the right direction. And that's a job that's 24/7, as I mentioned. It never stops. And so I have to evaluate each and every day, each and every week, and each and every December at the end of the season.
Speaking, I mean, like I said, you haven't made a lot of changes postseason, but you've definitely not pulled any mid-season triggers that I can recall. Is that something you would do if it necessitated it, or are you against that just sort of philosophically?
Well, I think every situation is different. I've never felt like there was a reason or a benefit for the current team to make a mid-season change. I know people do that, but you're asking me specifically, and I have never seen a time when it would benefit the team to make a mid-season change.
Lastly on that, I know obviously nowadays there's so many more people on your staff in support roles and those sorts of things. In the old days, if you change, assistants, where do you get the next assistant? Does the fact that you have more people on staff that could potentially fill roles, does that change your thought process on a mid-season change, or are you still of the belief that that's pretty unlikely?
Well, I think everything you're saying is true, but there's more than that goes into it versus just move a guy out and move a guy in.
Okay.
There's just a lot of moving parts. Even though we have expanded coaching staffs, we still have specific coaches that are responsible for positions and or coordinating on both sides of the ball. So it would have to be a really, really good reason to say, I'm going to stop in midstream and restart with another coach. And I'm not saying one way is right or wrong. I've just never been a big fan of that side of it, just based on, I feel like it might cause more disruption than good at that particular time.
Okay, we'll go to Barry Trammell with the Tulsa World. Go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, Mike, we like to talk about the quarterbacking and the offense and the problems and all that, but the defense has had some rough times in recent weeks. What have you done in the last 2 weeks to try to fortify that defense?
Well, there's not anything out of the ordinary. So what we've done is try to identify where the issues were, as I'd mentioned, earlier on this call, and then what's the solutions based on the personnel that we have, and how can we make that better for this game, the upcoming game on Friday night. And that's what we did last week, and then we'll continue to do that this week.
Okay, we'll go to Tyler Waldrop. Go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, Mike, just curious on the defensive side, now that you've had time to watch the West Virginia tape back and evaluate the guys more, have y'all looked at making any just personnel changes just with terms of responsibility now that you've had more time to kind of replace Nick and figure out what the plan is up front?
So there's not really a lot of personnel changes. If we have guys that are injured, we move other guys in. We ask them to compete and play at a high level. If we're like anybody else in the country, if we lose an experienced player that's very talented, the guy that's moving in for him is probably not going to be that far along. But then our job is to put him in a position, concept and scheme wise, and not ask them to do too much as to where they can play at a high level to give us the best chance to have success on that side of the ball.
Okay, we'll go back to Scott Wright. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, Mike, in talking about quarterbacks, we've talked a lot about Allen this year, but in the 2 times that Garrett has been on the field, what have you seen, and what are your thoughts about his overall play so far when he's been in there this year?
He graded out and played much better in this last outing than he did in the first one. The first one he misfired on a couple throws, but he was better in this last one.
And one other question on the defensive side: how close is Justin Wright to being able to come back and help add some depth at linebacker?
Justin's been practicing and is getting some work. Now, how far he'll come along in the 6 to 8 practices that he's had, it's hard to tell. But he is back out there practicing with us.
Okay, we'll go back to Barry.
Yeah, Mike. When the BYU and Iowa State seem to be the top 2 teams in the Big 12 for now, you could make a case for Iowa State before the year because they had a lot of returning starters. They've had some success in the past. No one saw BYU coming. Also, some of the teams we thought were going to be at the top of the league are falling and not there. Is this the case of from year to year now? We just don't know what's going to happen.
Well, we've talked about this. We talked about it 2 years ago, last year, last summer, this last season. We talked about it out in Las Vegas, and I've mentioned it here. We're in free agency now. We're in a different world. These players are they're in mentally a different state. They make money now. This has become an NFL concept, and it's all coming true. It's week to week. It's hard to tell based on off-season transactions. Quarterback play is still a big part of it, in my opinion. You get good quarterback play, you'll always kind of be in the mix. If you're not getting good quarterback play, then you'll have a hard time competing. But what you're saying is true. I think this is the future. It's across the board, and it's good for viewership. Not so good for coaches, hard on their lifestyle. But either way, that's the future based on the availability in off seasons to bring kids in. I had a higher opinion of BYU, Barry, than what most people did, because the last 2 or 3 years, BYU started the season 4-0, 5-0. I don't even, they might have even got to 6-0 at one time. And then they had injuries and had quarterback issues and a couple other things happened, and they fell off at the end of the season. But they've had a good team, in my opinion, over the last 3 or 4 years.
Okay, back to Marcus with the news press. Go ahead, Marcus.
Do you have any updates on Brendan or Ollie? Looked like they got banged up a bit in that West Virginia game.
No injury updates.
Okay, back to Jenny. Go ahead, Jenny.
Hey, Mike, you said a second ago, good quarterback play is pivotal, always has been, but maybe even more so now. When you look at Allen, obviously had the struggles against Utah, seemed like maybe just a bad day. Now, as it's become more of a consistent theme with the way he's playing, what have you pinpointed into why he's struggled the way he has? Is there any consistency across the games that he's had difficulties?
We need him to set his feet. We need him to step up in the pocket, and that's the discussion and conversations that we've had with him, and then I've had them with you guys for the last 2 months. And early in the season, he was much better. And the last 3 or 4 games, he's not setting in the pocket and stepping up and delivering the target. He's fallen backwards, and that's causing him accuracy issues, which you guys can see. It's very simple when it comes to his issues. We need him to sit in the pocket. We need him to step up and work forward and deliver the ball.
Is that surprising that he was doing exactly what you wanted in that regard, and now there's been a regression? How do you sort of explain what's happened there?
I'm not sure. I would have already stopped it if I had a reason for it. And I'm saying that in a very respectful way. I'm not out there doing it. So I feel like we're coaching it, and I feel like we're explaining it. We have to get it done on the field. That's what has to happen. And it's not a really complicated concept. When he is set in the pocket and played forward, he's done very well. When he's drifted sideways or backwards, he's performed poorly. That's about as clear cut as I can get.
Okay, we'll go back to Scott. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, Mike, you've been up to Colorado and places like that multiple times. And I'm just curious your thoughts on the challenges of playing in altitude like you're going to face this week.
I'm sure could be issues with altitude. These guys now have nutritionists, and we have vitamins and such and things we give them to try to keep their oxygen levels at a high. BYU does not play in a tempo offense, which I think could be a bigger factor. That's not been their history. So I don't really feel like that'll be an issue. I've never played there. I've been to Provo a couple times, but I've never played there. So I don't feel like it'll be an issue, in my opinion, with the altitude.
Okay, we'll go to Tyler. Go ahead, Tyler.
Yeah, you've been for the last couple weeks, you've been sort of predicting that the special teams is going to have a big moment, and then y'all had a big return in the last game. I'm just curious, was there a light bulb moment? Was there something in practice that you saw that sort of led you to believe that a breakthrough was coming? And is this something that you expect to see more of going forward?
I just from practice, watching them in practice and them understanding concepts and figuring out what we're trying to get accomplished. I've seen strides over the weeks that made me feel like that we would have good days on special teams, which we had. That was the one bright spot from the last game. those are the things that I see in practice, and that was the reason I mentioned to you that I liked where we were, and I felt like that we were getting better on special teams.
With the way Snyder teaches, is it maybe more is it more complicated? Does it take longer for some things to click for guys?
It's not really more complicated. I think that there's just greater detail in the technique that we use, and it does take some time. Repetition's obviously going to make us all better, and I'm seeing some of the continued repetition in the same areas start to pay some dividends for our team.
Okay, back to Jenny. Go ahead, Jenny.
Mike, I know nobody's more frustrated by losses than you, than your coaches, than your players. But obviously you've got fans that are highly invested, still coming and packing the stadium, NIL donors, all that sort of thing. What's your message to those folks that are, still with you? Still obviously OSU fans, as they're sort of dealing with the frustration of the season?
Well, there's three ways to answer that. One would be the head football coach and the ambassador of Oklahoma State University, one of them. One would be as a person, and one would be as just the head coach of a team. So, there's a variety of ways that you could answer that question.
Well, you want to pick one of those three and answer it?
So you're going to get a generic answer as the head coach and the ambassador, an ambassador to university, very similar. Somebody asked me that question the other day, in that the truth is that anybody that pays and comes to support our team has a right to say or do anything they want. And I'm okay with that. That's one way. As a head coach, I would say that if you really want to help our team, and you're coming and being supportive of the team no matter what, you're also giving a vision to the recruits that are in the stands, that are there listening and watching. So, what's your ultimate goal? Or do you really love Oklahoma State? Do you really love Oklahoma State football? Do you want to help us? Be aware of the situation that's at hand with recruits that are there and watching. And then the third way is as a parent. It's like I tell my kids, every time something goes wrong in society, people who are weak want to complain and bitch. That's what they do. So I tell my kids, when something goes wrong, man up. Now, I don't have girls, but nowadays women man up and be strong. Don't always complain and bitch, and try to find an easy way out. Same thing I share with the team. As we travel through life, there's going to be situations that don't always go your way. So are you just going to cry and complain and bitch and moan, or are you going to figure out a way to help and make it better? So there's really three ways to handle that. And then in my situation, based on who my audience is, those are the three ways that I handle that situation, if that's a good enough answer for you.
That's fair. Thanks.
You bet.
Okay, we've got time for a couple more. If anyone else has a question, just click react and then raise hand. We'll get to a couple more. And okay, we'll go to Marshall Scott. Go ahead, Marshall.
Yeah, Mike, you said no injury updates on the players. Are you doing okay? There's a reason we're on Zoom today, I guess.
Well, I had a little run-in with my cattle over the weekend, and I guess they've been watching us play and got headbutted. So I've got a bad eye that I didn't think would be particularly enjoyable for people when they were looking at my pretty face in a live interview. But more importantly, it's full of blood, and I get dizzy, and so it's not easy to be upright and be in a normal function. But other than that, I'm doing great.
Okay, we will go to back to Scott Wright. Go ahead, Scott.
Well, this wasn't going to be my question, but now I'm curious with you talking about uh, your head. I know you like to go up way up top for practice. Are you able to do that, or is that
Yeah,
an issue when
no,
you get up?
I'm good. It's just a combination of standing up there and talking to y'all for 30 minutes, and I'm a little nauseated and dizzy based on the I mean, I'm sure if you guys have ever had a bloodshot eye that's full of blood, it can make you a little bit dizzy and nauseated. So I just didn't think it would be good to stand up there in front of you guys. And but no, I'm fine, and it should get better every day. Hopefully, it'll get a little better. But I'm fine. I'm working same hours. I mean, it's no big deal. I just didn't think it was very appealing.
Good deal. With the question I was gonna ask is, when your team is in a little bit of a losing streak. I know you've talked about the phrase that Nick Saban likes to use, rat poison. Listening to things on social media or whatever. Do you warn the guys to try to stay away from that even more when you're in a little bit of a losing streak like this, or do you just kind of let that go?
Well, actually, I tell them and warn them the same thing all the time. Um, I think whether you're winning or playing good, or you're not playing as good as you want to, or if you've lost some games, I don't know what's positive on social media out there in either situation. That's just me as a person and maybe a parent more so than even a coach. But when I make decisions and try to communicate things with our team, I try to do it as if they were one of my own sons. And if I'm going to say what's the pros and cons of social media, I don't know that there would be enough pros, and there's way more cons to getting on there, unless somebody has a good reason to get on there. So I share that with them constantly about that, because I think that I really believe that there's a part of your brain that you devote to that type of communication in social media, and I think it subconsciously wears on you, whether it's positive or negative. And I think most of the time it can be negative, because if you're continuously reading where you're doing great all the time, then human nature is to relax a little bit. And then that's when you get into an issue. And then obviously, if there's people out there that are being negative, I don't think that there's anything about that that helps you and or our team. So yes, I make them aware of that in both situations.
Okay, we've got time for one more, so we'll wrap it up with Tyler from the Tulsa World. So, hang on. Go ahead, Tyler, and then we'll wrap it up with this one.
Okay, you're muted.
Coach Mike Gundy, this is Bill Haston. I'm sitting here with Tyler Walder. I wondered if last week was more about, I think Jenny kind of asked about this, but it was last week more about emotional and physical recovery, or was it more about an urgency to fix some issues and get better?
Physical recovery was part of it. There wasn't really anything emotionally. The team's practice habits and attentiveness and enthusiasm and energy has been excellent. Honestly, you could have watched his practice last Tuesday and Wednesday, and you would have thought we hadn't lost a game this year. So from that standpoint, it's been good. We did cut back to try to give him a break on the physical side of it, Bill, shoulders and all those things, because we've been at it since August 1st. But we got some 2.5 good practices in. I felt good about it. And then obviously we need to crank it up today and tomorrow, because we got to leave a day early.
Mike, have your guys been as, or is this Barry Trammell now, or is it still me? Okay, sorry, Coach. Have your guys been as upset, disappointed, angry about this last 3 games as you would like for them to be, or do you pay much attention to that part of it?
And well, I pay a lot of attention to it. I think that's a big part of my job and the role that I play. And that if we don't play as well as we wanted to, then I want guys to feel that. I want to see them have some sort of dejection for that. And then I want them to recover quickly because we got to go back to work. We have to reprogram, get ready for the next game, and try not to let a game there be a hangover for the next one. And these guys have been good in that area. So, like, if you lose a game, I don't think there's any reason to celebrate or smile or laugh or joke around. Even if it doesn't affect you, then I think you need to act like it does, because we get a pass fail grade, which I've mentioned that before each week. And if at the end of the game, if we lose, we get a fail grade. Now, we could have played a hell of a game and still get an F because ultimately we're trying to win the game. Or we could have not played very well and get a passing grade because we won. Well, that's where my role comes in, and being able to communicate to the coaches and the team about what my opinion is on what happened. So to answer your question, it hurts them emotionally when they don't win, which is what you want. But I feel good about them recovering because they're going to have to recover quickly and come back and practice. And at this point, that's what I see. I see the guys that are eager to improve and get better for the next game on Friday night.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for bearing with us with the change of plans. Coach, you have any closing statements? Or are you good?
I'm good. I appreciate everybody working with me on this one. So I'll catch you guys in Provo.
All right. Thanks, guys.